Okay, item 1B. Modifications to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair.
Are there any modifications at this time? No?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We're moving on to item 1C, motion to approve. The minutes of October 2nd are before you. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, may I please have a motion?
So moved.
All right, moved by, I'm sorry, did you catch that?
Andrew.
Was that Andrew?
Second.
Okay, second by,
I'm sorry, can you please confirm who made the motion? Andrew. Thank you. Thank you.
all right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. General public comments and public comments on the agenda. Instructions on how to provide public comments have been included in the agenda. Staff, are there any general comments?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, so moving on, we have comments from the chair and member comments. At this time, I'd like to invite any TAC member comments to provide any information not on the agenda. All right, seeing none, we're moving on. TAC liaison report. At this time, I'd like to invite Andrew to please provide an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy holidays, everyone. So one of the handouts you have in front of you is the liaison report. It's just a few items today. It's also coming to the website after this. The first, and also one note, the mics, we have a few that aren't working. The ones that you have in front of you are supposed to be working, but you might have to share some. There's not one mic per person, so just use the ones by your partner. So the first item we have is the Transportation Alternatives Program funding cycle is now open. It's open until February 14th. You can get more information at palmbeachtpa.org/TA. And we do require pre-application meetings. So if you are interested in pursuing this, please reach out to Brian Ruscher in our office, and you get the contact information and sign up on our website at palmbeachtpa.org/TA. Next is Safe Street Summit 2025. Again, it's going to be hosted here in West Palm Beach. Looks like it's going to have some great speakers. It's going to be occurring February 6th and 7th, and you can register. The early bird registration closes on December 18th, so you can get more information at safestreetsummit.org. It's also this week older driver safety awareness from December 2nd to 6th. So join the U.S. Department of Transportation's NHTSA and encouraging older adults, family members, and caregivers to be proactive about discussing safe mobility and building a transportation plan. You can find out more information on their website. Other ones have been in the liaison report before, but our regional transportation plan is slowly being finalized. So all of the 3 MPOs in our region, so TPA, Broward, and Miami-Dade, are all passing their long-range transportation plan very soon by the end of this year. And then once that's all complete, we then finalize the regional transportation plan next year. So that's still occurring. You can still get involved and take the survey online at cftec.org. And the other ones are just the grant tools that are out there for the Federal Highway Administration when it comes to transportation grants, and then signing up for our newsletter. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Do any committee members have any questions on this report? All right, seeing none, we are moving on to action items. We have a motion to elect officers for the 2025 calendar year. First, I would like to open the floor to nominations for the chair. I am currently the chair, and I'm more than happy to continue in this role. If there are any other nominations, please now.
I'll nominate Natalie. I think the board's had a very great feel to it in the past year. The conversation's been pretty fluid. We've stayed on time, which is not easy for us as a committee. I'll nominate Natalie to continue serving as chair.
I make a motion to nominate Mr. Davis. We need to give Natalie a break. Poor dear's kind of worked off on this one. Pays for parking.
For the record, I am happy to still serve. Just want to make sure, Aaron, you know.
Please use your microphones.
If it's the will of the committee, I will serve.
So what do we do here, staff?
Sure.
Do we take a
We'll
vote?
go, I'll do roll call and you can
I'm
choose.
sorry, is there a second for the nomination?
You don't need any seconds for the
Do
nomination.
not, okay.
Nope. So we'll do a roll call and the two nominees are Natalie Crowley and then Brian Davis. So when your name is called, choose one of those two.
Okay.
Good order.
Second, go to the beginning. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay. Andrew Mack,
Natalie?
Jason Kaufman, Denise Malone,
Natalie,
Terrence Bailey, Alex Hansen,
Natalie?
Kenny Wilson, Andrew Gambo William, Brian Davis,
I vote for me.
Ira Dangelman,
Natalie.
Aaron Hoffman, Joyce Kai,
Uh,
oh, I'm sorry. Lorraine Cargill. Oh, you voted for Brian, right? Because you.
I was gonna say, Brian, I mean.
Okay, Lorraine Cargill,
Natalie.
Chang Jang Lin,
Natalie as a good neighbor.
Kim Delaney,
Natalie.
Felipe LaFaso,
Natalie?
Christopher Marsh,
Natalie?
Jonathan, oh, I'm sorry, Natalie Crowley,
Natalie.
Mo Alturk,
Brian.
okay. Oh, and Jamie Brown.
Natalie?
Okay, so I think Natalie.
We have one more
Yes,
member who joined
one
as
more
well.
member, yes. Thea Hansen Nuno. Thank you. So it wins 21-3, Natalie.
All right, thank you very much. I'm happy to serve in the role and thank you very much for your support. So second, I'd like to open the floor to nominations for the vice chair. Denise Malone is the current vice chair. Denise, I'm going to ask you, are you willing to continue to serve in this capacity?
I am. Thank you for the opportunity this past year, and I'm happy to go forward as well, if that's the will of the committee.
Great, thank you. At this time, are there any other nominations for vice chair? If there's only one nomination, then I will close the nominations. Staff, are there any other actions that we need to take at this point since there were no other nominations?
Probably still just an overall vote for the
An
vice chair.
overall vote, okay. So may I please have a motion for vice chair for Denise Malone? All right, moved by Terrence, second by Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. Congratulations.
Okay. Try to get Brian.
All right, staff, are there any comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Any committee members have any comments? Okay, thank you. And for the record, Jim Bell is here, staff. Oh, Jim Bell. Right, so we are moving on to action items, item letter B, excuse me. This is the adoption, the recommended motion to adopt the 2050 Long-Range Transportation Plan. At this time, I'd like to invite Stuart Robertson of Kimley Horn and Associates to present this item.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Technical Advisory Committee. My name is Stuart Robertson with Kimley Horn. Our team has been supporting the TPA over the last 18 months on the development of the Long-Range Transportation Plan. You may remember members of my team as well as TPA staff who have given several presentations at key points in the development of the LRTP over the past 18 months. Most recently in October, at your October meeting, we gave a presentation of the draft plan. We received comments from committee members as well as other stakeholders within the community. We have addressed those comments and are now presenting to you the final plan and asking for a recommendation of adoption. So the TPA's Vision 2050 is part of a national program that every MPO participates in around the country to develop a long-range plan for transportation. The LRTP process is a living document. It is updated with a major update every 5 years, but it can be amended by an MPO at any time. If there are new projects that come about that receive federal or state funding, the MPO can amend the LRTP for planning consistency to include those projects. The LRTP is required for our metropolitan area to continue to receive federal and state funding. It's part of the requirements of the federal metropolitan transportation planning process. And it's intended to guide the application of federal and state transportation dollars for prioritized transportation projects within the metropolitan area. Lastly, it is a pipeline for the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. Projects must be consistent with the LRTP in order to be considered to go into the 5-year work program, or the TIP. So since October, we have addressed comments received by stakeholders as well as committee members and the governing board. So the highlights of the changes that we have made since the October version of the plan that you saw are updating project costs and descriptions based on stakeholder comments, responsive to those comments. We have moved the other local projects submitted during the call for projects into the appendices. We have included the scenario planning summary. There were 3 scenarios chosen by the TPA for modeling purposes in the scenario planning. Those are transit desires, autonomous and connected vehicles technology, and telecommuting. Also, all of the appendices have been updated on the website. So our process has been an 18-month public-facing process that began with a goal-setting exercise, which included a workshop with your committee back in the summer of 2023. The call for projects went out to local governments as well as to the Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT, in the fall of 2023. We got great response from the agencies that the TPA contacted for call for projects. We conducted a needs assessment over the winter of 2023, which included a technical analysis, a scenario planning exercise, which included that travel demand modeling that I referenced earlier in the spring of 2024. And then over the summer, we went into the budgeting and implementation phase and development of the draft cost feasible plan. And then the final step is plan adoption, scheduled for later this month at the TPA governing board. So a key part of the LRTP is the prioritization process. This includes both the multimodal needs, which is a technical analysis of all transportation needs in the county, as well as the project desires, which were those call for projects submitted by state and local governments. These projects went through a screening process for alignment with the TPA goals and objectives, which were one of the various steps of the process that we had presented to you earlier in the development of the plan and got your endorsement on the goals and objectives. We then developed cost estimates, basic scopes for the projects, and received stakeholder input from another round of public meetings on those projects. Then ultimately, this ends up with a 3-bucket plan, if you will. So the column on the right here includes in green the cost feasible projects. These are projects for which federal and state revenue is anticipated to be available over the life of the LRTP out to the horizon year of 2050. Doesn't mean they're programmed yet, but that would be the tip. But in the LRTP, what we're talking about is funding anticipated to be available from our revenue forecasts for state and federal dollars. And at the October meeting, for those of you that were here in October, you may remember we went into a great deal of detail about the process for revenue forecasting, which we worked very closely with revenue agencies as well as with FDOT central office on that revenue forecasting. The second bucket is shown in blue here. Those are the illustrative projects. These projects are consistent with TPA goals. However, they are considered to be not cost feasible simply because we don't anticipate there would be enough revenue available from federal or state funds from the typical transportation funding sources to be able to implement those within the lifetime of the LRTP. So they are considered to be illustrative projects. And then the third bucket is the other local projects. These are projects that are currently ineligible for federal or state funds, but they are priorities submitted by local governments during the call for project process. So I also want to point out that some projects are phased within the LRTP. So on the left side of this graph, there's a chart for cost feasible. And I want to point out that it does include some feasibility studies that the TPA is anticipating to fund within the LRTP. This doesn't mean that all phases of the project implementation are cost feasible. For example, the study may be included in the cost feasible section, but additional funding would have to be sought either through discretionary grants or some other type of transportation funding source to be able to fully implement those projects. So I want to also highlight some of the items that are new to the Vision 2050 plan. This is as compared to the currently adopted LRTP, which is the 2040 LRTP. One of the things that we have tried to focus on is being precise with the short-term and long-term implementation strategies for public transit. So the strategy outlined in Vision 2050 is to start with replacing old shelters and building new transit shelters at key bus stops, trying to build ridership through the introduction of mobility on demand zones, and feeding our fixed routes with ridership from these mobility on demand zones. So the purple areas shown in this map are identified as mobility on demand zones. Some local governments have already implemented these zones within the county. We also have tri-rail extensions shown within the plan. There's the VA hospital extension and also the extension into northern Palm Beach County. Also within the plan are express bus routes. These would be projects to be implemented with capital funds to support new buses as well as park and ride lots. Again, trying to build ridership within the fixed bus route system in order to potentially be able to have the type of ridership level that would accommodate more premium transit services in the future. Also wanted to mention transit signal priority and the intelligent transportation system as an important component of enhancing public transit mobility and speed. These would be for bus routes on the National Highway System, as well as on bus routes on the 561 plan network. So also within the plan, we have a refined active transportation network. We further refined which are the most highly prioritized corridors to receive pedestrian and bicycle improvements, in particular as consistent with the TPA's Complete Streets Design Guidelines, separated bicycle lanes, and other projects to support walking, bicycling, and micromobility within the county. We've also identified freight activity areas, and we have a map that is shown in the LRTP for that. Electric and alternative fuel corridors And the feasibility studies, which are important components to look at potential investments in higher level capital intensive improvements typically. Things like a freight corridor along US 27, potential rail along US 27. There's a feasibility study there, but it's not considered, the implementation of that would not be considered cost feasible, but that study may be able to identify a funding strategy for implementation. We also have resilience corridors that are identified in the plan for feasibility study. A1A in the Riviera Beach area of the county is one example of those infrastructure resilience studies identified in the plan. So what are some of these maps, zones and corridors? On the left are the ITS corridors that is consistent with FDOT District 4's TSM&O plan, as well as the potential implementation of transit signal priority. Freight activity areas that I referred to earlier, that's the map in the center. And on the right are the alternative fuel corridors map. So all of those things are kind of the highlights of what's new to the Vision 2050 plan and the way that our team has responded to changes within the transportation industry. So how do projects go from concept within the LRTP to implementation? Well, certainly it starts by being a project within the LRTP, either in the cost feasible or illustrative section of the plan we think are eligible for federal or state funding. Those projects, though, would then need to be prioritized by the TPA governing board through the list of priority projects. This communicates to the federal and state transportation partners that these are the projects that the local governing board is intending to want to prioritize for implementation. So that's how we would prioritize projects. And then finally, the Transportation Improvement Program, which is the 5-year capital plan, that is where the project would move into when it is ready to have at least one of its phases programmed for implementation. Sometimes projects get a PD&E phase first, then they go to design, then they go to construction. There's various phases of the projects that can move into the Transportation Improvement Program. For it to be implemented, it would have to be fully funded for construction within the Transportation Improvement Program. So that wraps up my presentation. Try to give kind of a highlight presentation here. I know the one back in October was much longer, but just wanted to hit the highlights of the plan, talk about what's new to the Vision 2050 plan, and then ask if you have any comments or questions I would be happy to address. And then TPA staff are looking for a recommendation to approve.
Thank you, Stuart. Staff, are there any public comments at this time?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. So now we can move along to committee member comments. I heard somebody chime in. Was that you, Mo? Okay. go ahead.
Thank you. Question about the ITS, I believe, network, TSM&O. I noticed on the map that you did not include many of the corridors that are already included in the AMP, the Arterial Management Program. I have a question on how did you determine which corridors that will be included in this map that you showed?
They were from the District 4 TSM&O master plan. Which corridors are you referring to that you think may be?
Like, you know, the AMP, the Arterial Management Program, that is a joint venture between the FDOT and ourselves, includes the major corridors like Okeechobee Boulevard, like Southern Boulevard and PGA, Indian Trail, Indian Town, Glades Road, all of those major corridors. I don't think that I saw most of them shown on the plan.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll review the AMP and review that for consistency with our documentation. The intent is to be consistent.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So are there any other comments at this time? Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, first I had exactly the same comment that Mo had. I noticed several east-west corridors, which I thought had some ITS measures, did not seem to be identified on the map. Second, there's a table towards the beginning of the document that pertains to mileage of facilities. And you have there, I guess, miles of shared use paths, separated bike lanes and so forth. The first thing that jumped at me was how low some of those numbers were. So separated bike lanes, it said 1.3 miles, which seemed quite low to me, especially because in West Palm, I'm pretty certain we have more than that, more than the 1.3 miles. Then later on in the document, there's a map of bicycle facilities in which we have kind of the same categories. And then I noticed that several segments were identified as separated bicycle facilities. So my point is there seems to be a disconnect between the facilities that are identified in the map, the bicycle map, and then the data identified of mileage of facilities earlier on in the document. And also in the map, I noticed there were, this is a PDF, and for downtown West Palm Beach, for example, it's difficult to discern what, but there were some areas that I'm not sure if we're properly reflecting the facilities that we have. And I noticed at least one facility out west in West Palm Beach, Cumberland, which has a separated bike lane, was not identified as such in the map. So I guess the point is, if you can relook at the map and relook at the table
Will do.
for
I
that.
I have a feeling that the table of facility mileage may be based on the federal aid highway network, whereas the map, I think, was intended to be a little more comprehensive, and that's probably the difference. Either way, we need to clarify that within the report so that it doesn't confuse an avid reader such as yourself that's going to notice that type of discrepancy.
Yes, thank you. The other comment that I had was with regards to the projects that are identified towards the end of the document. And I noticed for a number of years, we have identified as one of the top priorities, the passenger rail extension to northern Palm Beach County. And now I noticed that the project has been, I guess, relabeled, and the scope of the project seems to have changed. That seems to be the case for the LRTP as well as for the draft tentative work program. Now it says, I'm sorry, just trying to read here from my notes. The new identifier is FEC Railway Passengers Service from the Broward County line to Jupiter. So it seems to be now a county-wide project as opposed to before being just the extension of passenger rail service to northern Palm Beach County. I don't have a problem with expanding the scope. My only concern is now we're talking about a lot more money, a much more significant scope. Is this going to make it more difficult to provide passenger rail service to northern Palm Beach County, because now what used to be considered kind of the first phase of that is now part of this much larger project? I just want to make sure that as part of this, we're not slowing down what was already a pretty slow process of trying to have passenger rail service to northern Palm Beach County.
Certainly. Brian Rusher, Deputy Director of Multimodal. Happy to answer that question about the FEC passenger rail service. So in coordination with Lisa Mack at the Department of Transportation, we identified that there was still additional work to be done on the extension north of the Northwood crossover, which was a TPA funded project, to develop 5 stations along the FEC passenger rail. We are going to continue and do that work as part of a larger effort. Based off of their recommendations, they currently have a $5 million scope of work with a on-call consultant. We have them slated to come and make a presentation to the TAC in February. I believe Mr. Bailey recommended that previously, and we appreciate that because we're now hopeful to have them come and make a presentation on what that scope will look like. They've decided, based off of the need and what the work is going to be going on for those 5 station areas, that they would look at the entirety of the corridor, because that's how Broward is going to eventually come up to Palm Beach County line. So they wanted to ensure that each station has a proper vetting at the same time as we move forward. But the 5 stations north are going to be studied and continued with this whole of the project in partnership with Broward and the Department of Transportation. So we are moving forward.
My only concern is it was always thought that eventually there will be service, right, countywide
Mhm.
on the FEC tracks. However, at least the discussion was the first phase would be the northerly extension of service. I just want to make sure that by now expanding the scope, we're not, that what was thought to be that first phase is now kind of, it's not going to happen because, or it's going to happen much later because it's now not a project by itself, but part of this much larger project that is a lot more expensive, a lot more complicated, and so on.
And that's part of the study, is looking at what's the most effective phase, continuing to look at what's been studied in the past, looking at the northern extension, looking at the extension from Broward County line north as they continue to grapple with their new river crossing. And once that becomes a feasible project, they'll be able to move their service to Broward County line on the FEC. And from that, that's great, but we need to coordinate that operational and the logistics of crossovers if that's going to be the case, and we're going to prioritize those 5 northern stations. So it requires a little bit of thinking on both Broward, Palm Beaches, and DOT's part, and that's why we've initiated work with them on this larger scope. We're still keeping those 5 stations and the northern extension as a priority in our list, but to be able to fund that $5 million study and to use some of those funds, we have to look at it corridor wide.
Thank you, Alex. I'd also like to chime in on that as well, because I also noted the revised language that is also in the next agenda item. And the way I read it, Alex, was some of the language is also broader than previous. And I think my take is that will assist. So as the scope is expanded and the language is broader, I think that will actually enable the project to move forward, given all of the entities that are involved and all of the steps that are necessary to move this to the next level. So I also noted that change, and it came up as a as a point of just I guess initial awareness, and I think I understand what the changes are, and I think that those changes are positive for the projects taking the next step forward. So next we have Brian.
Actually, I believe Krishi wanted to speak to her public comments and had come up and wasn't recognized.
Sorry, Khurshid, go ahead.
Kashid Mahyuddin, Planning Division, 26 years speaking here. Kind of speechless. I mean, I don't understand the meaning of, so am I correct? Can somebody clarify that you are adopting transit and bicycle pedestrian plan for the whole county, but only adopting the state and interstate roads? And I believe it's only Turnpike, I-95, Beeline, and Southern Boulevard. Do you have a map? Can you show a map of capacity improvements? And I think it's only what you are adopting is only for the state roads and not the local roads. So all the local, even if it's a roadway which is under construction, it is in the appendix and it's in the model. So it is reflected in that way, but it is not being adopted as a cost feasible. Am I correct? And I'm sorry, I mean, I only had Monday and Tuesday and got to look at the agenda on Monday after the long holiday. Maybe I didn't have much time and maybe I'm not clear, but can we see a map of capacity improvements? And we have a lot of traffic issues in this county. I mean, people are screaming, they're stuck in traffic. And I want to see what is the map? I mean, can you show in a map roadways, countywide, major roads, what is the capacity improvement? Or is it just the those 3 or 4 roadways that, and I see page number 13, you only have 3 new connections. One is State Road 7 in the long range. And the other one is, I can't even see, it looks like a connection, minor connection, maybe quarter of a mile or mile. from maybe on Flavor Pick, and there is one on south of Atlantic, and nothing else. It's a different approach, so I don't have much experience in this approach. It's a new approach, I guess. So anyway, I would love to see a map. If you can project, that would be great, so that we can see at least what we're doing with traffic issues. It deals with very comprehensively with all the non-transit, transit and bicycle, pedestrian, on all the local roads too. But it does not deal with traffic issues except on state and interstate.
Brian?
Know if anyone wanted to address that before I jump back in.
I can address it. That's fine.
Staff?
Would you like to? Sure. So the ones referring to in the plan for roadway capacity that are supported products, meaning they're in the cost feasible or the illustrative list for the TPA. It's the ones that are going to be in the strategic intermodal system. So any from the larger SIS plan that FDOT has, so that includes 995, other SIS roadways, Turnpike. And then the ones that are not on the SIS that are supported for federal and state funds within the plan are the ones that are ongoing in the TPA priority list of State Road 7 and Atlantic Avenue. And Krishi is right. The other one that is in the plan that is supported as a roadway capacity product that the county is doing with county incentive grant program funds is Flavor Picked extension or the Turnpike. So those are the only ones that are supported for federal and state funds by the TPA for roadway capacity. And so in the document itself, we tried to clarify in the section for cost feasible and other priorities, those sections that Stuart went through in his presentation, right? So we have those main TPA priorities that are it's states for clarity that are supported for federal and state funds. And then that other local products submitted during the call for products section has it where it's products submitted or identified in other plans that are provided for reference, but are not formally supported by the TPA for federal and state funding. However, these products may be administered and funded with local funding. If a local product seeks federal or state funding, the product will need to be amended into one of the TPA supported product lists. So our position, this document here before you today, does not have any other locally submitted products for roadway capacity that are supported by TPA at this time. So if they want to provide more justification for the product that it aligns with the TPA's goals and objectives, it's supported locally by local agencies, and we have all that, and it's really something that's work program ready to pursue for federal and state funds. We'll be happy to come back and try to amend it in the plan if they want to showcase that. But as right now, anybody that submitted local products for roadway capacity, you're in the local products submitted during the local call for products in the appendix.
And that approach is consistent with best practices that we have seen and we have been informed by USDOT as the way to handle federal and state funding compared to local funding within an LPO's LRTP.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Andrew. Brian?
Okay, now I'll make some comments. I had a question of what was unique or special when, and I'm referring to Appendix A because I finally got to look at the whole document the past couple of days. What was special about the comp plans of Belglade, Green Acres, and Jupiter, because they're referenced extensively, and I could not find really any reference to the county's comprehensive plan at all in the basis of this, and it looked the optics look a little strange, if you will.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was an omission or really our comp plan is not at all informing anything in the LRTP.
No, I'm sorry, that is just a part of the literature review that we did of select comprehensive plans. It's not meant to communicate any preference for those governments versus any other governments, just part of a literature review.
That's all for now. But thank you. I
Thank
just wanted to make sure I was trying to understand why the county's comp plan wasn't explicitly referenced.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Do any other committee members have comments? Are there any other comments from the public or any other comments from members who are out there in the virtual world? I don't think we actually have any on the virtual. Okay. I would just like to take a moment to thank the TPA staff and their consultant. I think we've all been following this journey that has been going on for a long time, and there were so many opportunities. I remember when Nathan was begging all of us to submit projects and to provide, set up meetings and to be able to contribute, to submit projects, to have the opportunity to exchange that information with staff. And the database that was created and the mapping was unbelievably helpful for us. We were able to look at all of the submitted projects and look at all of the entities that submitted them. And this was done in just, advanced time that gave us the chance to see all of the projects that were submitted. And we appreciate the organization of this entire massive process. So kudos to you all and doing such a great job. And thanks to the TPA staff for working on our specific comments with our jurisdiction that we had. And with that, may I please have a motion at this time? And then
Chair
I can open up
Crowley.
for further discussion.
Chair Crowley, we have a comment by Alex Hansen.
Yes, Alex.
Just before the vote, I want to clarify that while I'm supportive of the document in general, and again, I have a few minor comments that I relayed already, because of the inclusion of State Road 7 as a priority project in the plan, I'm going to have to vote no on the motion to recommend approval of the document. I just want to clarify my vote on this.
Thank you, Alex. Okay. With that being said, may I please have a motion of the item? Anybody out there? May I please-
Motion to recommend approval.
All right, motion by Andrew, second by Denise. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
All right, I think that was just Jessica and Alex, correct? Okay, so staff, we don't need roll call.
Actually, recommended body, no.
Okay, sounds good. Motion carries.
Thank you all. Appreciate your input throughout the process.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we are moving on to item C, motion to recommend endorsement of the fiscal year 2026-2030 draft tentative work program. So at this time, I'd like to invite Andrew back, the Deputy Director of Programs, to present this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we actually have a pretty packed agenda with some exciting stuff. These are my favorite things. So this is the draft tentative work program. And in front of you, before I get started, there is the Turnpike's handout. It's a large document here, but you can skip to the county, Palm Beach County products. They're going to speak third. I'm going to go and say a few words, and then we're going to have FDOT come up and say a few words, and then Turnpike, and then we'll take any questions. So for the draft tentative work program, this is for the upcoming fiscal year 26 through 2030. And it does take time to get to this process. It started last year, so we're always in a new cycle of trying to get to a new work program, a new transportation improvement program, right? So it starts with product development that happened winter of last year, heading into spring of 2024. And so that is really guided by the LRTP. So the 2045 LRTP has those priorities. It has those funding programs. We have those programs open for applications. So those were submitted. The Transportation Alternatives was this last round. Those are all reviewed for their feasibility and their support. And then those are ranked. Those are then put into the list of priority projects. That list is adopted. It includes the major products, includes those local initiatives, products that are still ongoing, the transportation alternatives, and then the shared use network of trails, that competitive process at the state level. That was done in July. With that list, FDOT takes that list, and then they start building the new work program. So the draft tentative work program, that's what you're seeing today. So what's happened since that priority list has been adopted? The state is looking at the new cost assessments that are adjusted for all the projects. They're looking at the new revenue forecasts that come out, and then they're balancing the work program and then trying to fit in state priorities, local priorities, and the ones of the TPA and the other MPOs throughout the state. This then is our opportunity to provide feedback to them for changes, additions, or deletions, is what the state statute says on that. And it gets endorsed by the governing board. And then after that builds their final work program. And that's how we have the final version of our transportation improvement program that we adopt. And we'll start operating under this come the new fiscal year, July 1st of 2025. And so what's in the draft tentative work program? So it is the draft list of projects by phase and funding source, federal and state funds over the next 5 years. Again, we're currently operating under the 25 to 29 TIP. So our current year is 25. This covers 26 through 30. And when they're rebalancing projects and new cost estimates and new revenue projections, they're making sure everything's stable. And then the outer year is usually when newer phases come in. Sometimes there's opportunities in earlier years, but for the most part, a lot of the new phases are coming in that outer year. And so you'll hear from AFDOT, they like to use this terminology pretty often since I've been here all 8 years at the TPA. They always state, maintain work program stability. So again, they're trying to keep the products that are already in the program stable and moving forward, right? And so products that are really complex have, you all know this, but have multiple phases. It could start with PD&E, going to design, right away and construction. So that could be well over a 5-year time frame. We have many projects like that are going through all these different phases. And so what they're looking to do every time they come with a new work program is to maintain that work program stability. And then after that, add in some new priorities. Little summary of what we're seeing in the plan. 280 products, $3.2 billion of federal and state funding in Palm Beach County. Majority of those are on the strategic intermodal system, so those roadway capacity projects. Those are I-95 projects, but a big bulk of it is actually Turnpike. And so you'll see that's Turnpike funds for Turnpike projects. And so you'll see a lot of those larger projects coming up for construction in the next 5 years. So a big amount in there. And they'll discuss that later on. When it comes to TPA priorities, we're seeing $442 million of federal and state investment over the next 5 years. Much of that is going towards those roadway capacity products that we still have in there. Those do also include pedestrian bicycle facilities for the whole typical section, but that's State Road 7 and finishing up Atlantic Avenue. $82 million towards complete streets. So a lot of the products we get in from the locals through our programs and a lot of our goals and objectives really score towards these are those types of improvements, complete streets. We have a lot of signal and intersection projects, $53 million. Those were submitted by Boca Raton and Palm Beach County throughout the past few years. And many of those are funded for design and they're starting to get funding for construction in the outer years. We have submittals from SFRTA and Palm Tran when it comes to vehicles, electric vehicles for Palm Tran and new rail cars for Tri-Rail, and then also transit shelters for Palm Tran. And then there's additional funds in there for lighting and safety. Okay. So that's all I have. We're not going to go to a vote now. I'm going to call up Jessica Rubio from AFDOT, and she's going to give a few words and a summary of what we're seeing here for our county from the AFDOT perspective.
Presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having the Department of Transportation presenting the work program today. And before I start, I would like to acknowledge the TPA for the continuous coordination during the development of the work program this cycle. Okay, before I start relating the projects that we have been able to fund this cycle, I would like to explain a little bit the process that we go through. And this pretty much aligns with the TIP development process Andrew presented today. And I'd like to start with the top left side when we prepare the draft tentative work program. This is from July through October. We receive allocations and we prepare the work program based on the allocations we receive. From November through December, we present to the various technical advisory committees, MPOs, TPAs, TPO board. And in December, we conduct the public hearing. In this case, the public hearing is next week, December 10th at 6:30. From January through February, FDOT compiles the district tentative work program to make the statewide work program, and they submit it to the governor, the legislature, the Florida Transportation Committee, and the Department of Economic Opportunity. In the meantime, the TPA is working on developing the new list of priority projects. In March, the FTC statewide conduct a statewide public hearing where we present the work program, the tentative work program, and the legislature next year will convene on March 4th. July 1st is after all the appropriations are approved by the state legislature and the governor, the 5-year work program is adopted by the FDOT secretary. And then we start again. The system opens and we develop the work program for next cycle. So in general, I have some statements I would like to give you about the work program. Every year, we update the cost for construction and right-of-way. So that is what helps us maintain a stable work program. Overall, we are reporting that project costs increased with respect to the prior year. Some funding allocations were lower than prior cycle. The estimated revenue distribution is based on percent population of the state. Our goal, as Andrew said, is to maintain projects that were committed in the common 4 years related to safety, preservation, and maintenance. And new projects are generally added in the work program on the new 5th year. In this case, it will be 2030. And I'm happy to report that the District 4 work program is balanced to the allocations we received. So now we're going to go through the detail of projects we have added this cycle. A red box means is a new phase added in this 5-year work program. So your priority 17-1D, this is US 1 from 25th Street to 45th Street. We have added construction and CI funds in fiscal year 2030, about $13.3 million. Priority 18-3, State Road 80 bypass between US 27 and 441. We added PD&E preliminary phases in fiscal year 2030, about $1.5 million. We're going to 19-1A. This is your transit signal priority. We have added $1 million in fiscal year 25. You have 20-1 US 1 at Spanish River Boulevard. We have added construction and CI in 2030, about $2.1 million. Priorities 20-2 Atlantic Avenue and Military Trail. There are signal upgrades at 3 locations, actually. Construction and CI added in fiscal year 2030, $3.6 million. Next one is also signal the upgrades in various locations in Boca Raton. The next 2 priorities, and we have added about, between both of them, $10 million in fiscal year 26. More signal upgrades, 21-3 in Boca Raton, added CEI and construction in fiscal year 2030, $3.2 million. Next one is a project, Indiantown Road and Central Boulevard. Project was already in the work program, but we were able to advance PD&E from fiscal year 29 into fiscal year 26 in coordination with the TPA. And total project cost, $3.3 million for PD&E. Local initiatives, we have 23-3. This is Boca Raton traffic signals and ITS improvements. This will be a lab with the city of Boca Raton. Added construction in fiscal year 2030, $1.8 million. Next priority, 7th Street from Australian Avenue to Tamarind Boulevard. Lab with the city of West Palm Beach, construction in 2030, $1.4 million. We had another priority, which the trial rail service, this is rolling stock for SFRTA. We were able to advance funds to fiscal year 25 for a total of $5 million. 23-6, Palm Beach County traffic signal upgrades, lap with Palm Beach County, construction in fiscal year 2030, $4.7 million. Wellington trains from east of Draft Horse Lane to Greenview Shores Boulevard, lap with the city of Wellington. We were able to fund construction in 2030, $1.7 million. Under the TA, the Transportation Alternatives Program, we funded Palm Street from Lake Avenue to US 1 Dixie Highway. Construction in 28, $1.5 million. This will be another lab project with the city of West Palm Beach. Northwest 2nd Avenue from Jeffrey Street to Hidden Valley Boulevard, construction in 28, $1.4 million, lab with the city of Boca Raton, as well as East Camino Real from Dixie Highway to Federal Highway, construction in 28, $800,000. Also, the Palm Tram received a federal earmark, and we were able to allocate those funds in fiscal year 26, $500,000 for bus shelter expansion. We added a new freight project. This is on I-95 and Congress Avenue and Peninsula Corporate Drive truck parking. We are starting design in fiscal year 27, about $600,000, with construction in 2030, about $4.5 million. And as I stated before, we have a public hearing on December 10th at 6:30. There is a link to register, or you can view the QR code to register online or in person. And at this point,
We'll turn it over to Turnpike real quick. James Brown Jr. He's just going to say a few words. I think he has a few slides as well.
thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am James Brown. I am the TPA liaison at Florida Turnpike Enterprise. I'm happy to be here this morning to present our program for fiscal years 26 through 30. We are looking to allocate $1.3 billion.
I'm sorry, please make sure you're using the microphone.
We did want to reiterate that all of our projects do take into consideration the pillars and that everything revolves around community engagement. We're continually working with our stakeholders, and we wanted to just point that out. The Turnpike System Prioritized process, all of our Turnpike projects have to get funded based on need. Our transportation needs are prioritized accordingly, and each year we go through our observed traffic data and future projections across the entire system. We do take into account environmental and economic feasibility, but at the end of the day, stakeholder input is the most important in those decisions. Our Turnpike Widening Infrastructure Initiative, Palm Beach is gearing up for all of our segments to add capacity here within the county. You may have seen our billboards on the facility driving north or south, but we're proposing $10 billion investment over the next 5 years in our entire mainline facilities throughout the state. We're going to be enhancing connectivity with our local roadway networks at our interchanges, adding travel lanes, focusing on safety, improving lighting and signage. But we'll get into those projects here for Palm Beach in a moment. We have 45 miles of Turnpike facility here in Palm Beach. And I did want to point out the handout that Andrew had mentioned, just a quick synopsis of that. The first page will give you an overview of those projects that are currently in construction, currently worked on within the current year. Page 10 starts Palm Beach County projects, and I'll be going through those in a moment. And then at the end of that document is anything that has been funded for any other phase other than construction. So I just wanted to go over our projects in this year's work program. We are widening West Palm Beach Service Plaza to north of Southern. That project is in this fiscal year construction. That's an additional allocation in fiscal year 26. All of these are pretty much our segments of the widening. Drainage improvements, North Atlantic to north of Boynton Beach, Lower County, North L38 Canal to North Atlantic, construction fiscal year 29, widening from north of Glades to north of the L38 Canal. This project widening PGA Boulevard up to Indiantown to Jupiter, that is new funding that is new to this year's work program. We've allocated $324 million in fiscal year 29. And then the rest of those are continued widening segments. You can see the corresponding year which construction is scheduled to start. Beeline to PGA, Okeechobee to Beeline. We just staggered them per segment. These are the 4 projects, an additional $21 million that's allocated for PD&E or for design phases. And you can see those pretty much encompass the remaining segments here in Palm Beach. And then I did want to point out the last was the new interchange at Hypoluxo Road, which that PD&E is scheduled to start in fiscal year 26. And again, I'll just point out the QR code to our public hearing website. To reiterate, the public hearing for District 4 is next Tuesday evening in Broward County. And with that, I guess we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, James. Andrew, do you have any other comments?
Nope, that's it. Well, you can take any questions for any of us.
Okay, thank you. And can I just seek clarification? This is not, although it's under action, you do, at this time, you do not need a motion, right?
Yes, we could take a motion, a
You
recommendation.
would like to have staff is seeking a motion for endorsement.
Correct.
Okay.
Recommended to the governing board for endorsement.
Okay.
You don't always see this item every year because sometimes it comes out in early October instead of December, depends on the cycle. And a lot of times it only goes to the governing board. So that's why it's a little you're this year. It's every other year you'll have an opportunity to see it for committees.
Okay, understand. All right, staff, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, do any committee members have comments? Alex?
Similar to the previous item, the State Road 7 projects are included in this item, and given the city's opposition to these projects, I cannot vote in support of this motion.
All right, thank you. Brian?
This is more like a general, would like a follow-up on this. About 2 years ago, we reviewed a PD&E, I think, study for widening the Atlantic between Turnpike and Jog. And in that, it had come out that the right-of-way needed to be expanded beyond the current ultimate right-of-way. And that was because of things like complete streets and, stuff like that. And FDOT had acknowledged at the time, or at least the representative here had acknowledged that, things like complete streets, Vision Zero, those kinds of things were requiring more facilities for non-vehicular modes. And it sort of triggered an understanding that a lot of what we have for rights of way are now fully dedicated or whatever. And if there's going to be a need for more rights of way, for more expanded facilities, and there was this understanding that FDOT was eventually going to come back with maybe what those new sections look like, because that would be something that would be very good for us to have, because we still have the ability to get some of these expanded rights of way. But we have to know about what the needs are, because we do have development review at the county, and we can actually compel people to give us the right of way as part of the development approval. And so if there's a way that that could be a follow-up item, because that can go to this, because I know that that's going to eat into right-of-way costs and acquisition. And so if there's things that can be done proactively in advance, and we know the facilities need to be even bigger than they were originally envisioned 20 years ago or whatever, it would be very beneficial for us to know something like that. So if we could get a follow-up on that, because I'm very aware of how much there's very limited dollars to chase things and to spend it on right-of-way acquisition. If we could potentially get it proactively rather than reactively, I think it would help the entire process. So.
I can follow up real fast. For that specific project, yes, that I think was a very detailed, numerous conversations with committees and governing board, and then also the drainage district, county commissioner, and then AFDOT for those. It came to a final typical section, and they're fitting at least minimum standards for bike lanes, buffer bike lanes on Atlantic Avenue. And then as much as we can for sidewalk widths, it's not all up to 10-foot paths, but as much as we can fit for 10-foot paths along the entirety of that corridor for Atlantic Avenue. And then it does narrow to, I think, 6 feet in some sections. But what you're stating, I guess, overall process, yes, I think we could probably work with you and see in the future how to get that process better overall from a planning perspective.
I guess I was staggered that given that we're doing 6-lane rights of way at 120 feet, 120 feet is still not enough to get all of that into. What do we need? Because the county needs to go back and look at thoroughfare maps and ultimate rights of way and stuff, because we can get also for DOT and other roads. It's just something as if we're actually planning here for facilities and we really want to put, money where our mouth is and get these things. And it's something that would be helpful if, and it was more of a DOT was realizing the ultimate right of way would not be enough to accommodate. And it was kind of looking for their, if they've already gone through the brain damage so that the rest of us don't necessarily have to, or if we know their state roads, we could help program it. So that's all.
All right, thank you, Brian. I've got Jim.
Yes, I just have a question regarding the item from FDOT, the FDOT plan, the FDOT truck parking at the Peninsula Corporate Center in the city of Boca Raton. I was just wondering if that truck parking is going to include any fleet vehicle parking, such as Amazon delivery vehicles, because that project has a previous DRI approval and a city approval, a master plan. And I'm not quite sure if that type of parking would be consistent with a park and ride facility and a transportation facility as defined in the state statutes. So I was just wondering if someone could give me a follow-up as to clarify what is going to be at that location in terms of truck parking.
Cesar Martinez, Planning Environmental Administrator with FDOT. I can give you a detailed answer later, but my understanding is we won't be precluding what type of trucks per se could use the facility, right? It will be open to the public. It will provide around 10 parking spaces. Will be sized for at least for a semi truck type trailer to use it, but I'm not sure whether or not we will be precluding service trucks or why not to use it.
Will that include overnight
Correct.
parking?
Yes, that would be pretty much the primary purpose for overnight parking.
So you're not aware of any kind of restrictions? It's just semis and less? I mean, no other provisions? All right, thank you.
Great, thanks. Mo.
Okay. I have a question for the Turnpike folks about projects on the Turnpike in Palm Beach County. I think in the past there was a plan to consider adding access point at Hypolaxo. I want to know if they could tell me where we are with that and whether it's still on the plans. I know that they are proceeding with converting the access on Jog Road to full access now. And I want to confirm that it's still in the plans and it's
Yeah,
going.
Hypoluxo Road is still in the plan. We have a PD&E scheduled for in fiscal year 26. Yeah, so it'll begin that study for that interchange at that time.
So what's the timetable or estimate for when it will be scheduled for construction?
It's an
Or has
unfunded
it been
project.
determined?
It hasn't been determined yet, yeah.
If they
Again,
are
that study will take
feasible.
place, and then at that time, we'll determine the feasibility.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mo, those are all your comments. Okay, thanks. So next I have Alex.
Yeah, just a follow-up for the Turnpike. A lot of the projects that you have in Northern Palm Beach County is from one interchange to the next. They're somewhat fragmented, I guess. You have Southern to Okeechobee, one project, Okeechobee to Beeline, a different project, Beeline to PGA, which is a relatively short section for Turnpike standards. It's a separate project. And then we have now PGA to Jupiter. Each project with their own separate schedule and construction timeline. Those projects are messy, right? They had a lot of congestion and so forth. Would it be possible to combine some of those? For example, again, Beeline to PGA is a small section. Could that be combined with the Okeechobee to Beeline project so that it happens concurrently, or with the PGA to Beeline? Again, we're reducing then the amount of pain, the length of that congestion that is naturally caused by construction. And those projects can take 2-3 years sometimes or more. So I do not know if those discussions have taken place. And again, whether the one that I'm thinking of again is Beeline to PGA, because it's a relatively short segment. If that one could be combined with either the one to the south or the one to the north. So again, you are reducing the time of construction and kind of the pain that is inflicted on the users of the facility.
Yeah, I know one major aspect of the reason why they're segmented the way they are is local community concern as well as drainage issues. So each particular segment is fractioned that way. I can take that back to our team as a concern, most definitely.
And again, the main one I think is that Beeline to PGA, because relatively short segment, if that one can be combined with the one that you have to the north or to the south, it may again reduce some of that time of construction and kind of the issues associated with the construction itself.
Yeah. Just to point out too, and that was Vicki Williams, she's our liaison administrator. Just wanted to reiterate that the construction's coming up fairly quick, within the next 5 years. So it's scheduled, but I will take that back to the team as a concern, especially that one segment. Yeah.
All right, thank you. CJ.
Hi, thank you. Maybe my question is also for Turnpike Enterprise too. Maybe I missed some information somewhere, but I didn't see the direct connections of the I-95 and Turnpike that's supposed to be around like Hope Sound.
That is correct. That PD&E study is going on now. It is still an unfunded project. So it is not currently within this work program cycle. That's up in Martin County. It's going to be around milepost 125 Bridge Road vicinity. But again, they are currently in that study and we'll be having public hearings in the spring.
So is there any proposed timeline for the, because I see the public's meeting has been posted and then the meeting has been scheduled for public hearing. So how come the funding is still not available?
Again, it's still in the study phase. So once that study concludes, we'll determine the feasibility of that. I would estimate timeline on that. Again, we're concluding the PD&E next year. And then from there, we'll determine, again, what the next step is on that. I know that it's a highly wanted project for our facility as well as for the community as an access point to alleviate Indiantown Road and Martin Highway connections. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, do any other committee members have comments at this time on the work program? Seeing none. Staff is seeking a recommendation for endorsement of this item. May I please have a motion?
So moved.
All right, motion by Brian. Do I have a second? Sorry. Second by Chris. All in favor? All opposed?
Nay.
Opposed by Alex and Jessica? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, so we are moving on to information items at this point in time. We are on item A, the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority Development Plan Update. At this time, I'd like to invite Jessica to please come up and present. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jessica Vargas Astaiza with the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority. We operate Tri-Rail, the commuter rail from Mangonia all the way to Miami Airport and now to Miami Central in downtown Miami. We also manage and dispatch the South Florida Rail Corridor. So today we're here to present to you our transit development plan. It is our major update to the plan that last time it was updated was 2018. Our consultant here, John Lafferty with Kimley Horn, who has been helping us through this process, will walk us through the presentation and provide you kind of like an overview of the process, kind of like the requirements, the schedule, and kind of like the components of the plan. But most importantly, we're here presenting to you. We've started presenting to all the MPOs and its committees in the region, looking for your input, not only from you, but also from the constituents you represent for the agencies and municipalities here. So we look forward to presenting you the update, the overview of the update and looking forward to your input. And we'll be here to assist with any questions right after John makes his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members, John Lafferty, SFRTA General Planning Consultant. I just have a brief presentation again, just to go over what a transit development plan is comprised of, as well as provide you and share with you some information that we've developed as we currently are preparing our TDP for submittal in the spring. So first, what is a transit development plan? As Jessica mentioned, this is a major update. All transit operators in the state of Florida are required to prepare a transit development plan to be eligible for state block grant funding. It does serve as the agency's vision with a 10-year planning horizon. There's a major update that's prepared, as Jessica mentioned, every 5 years, and then an annual update that's prepared in the interim years, which serves as a progress report. So it is an active living document, but the major update kind of really does set that stage for those 10 years. In July of this summer, there was a new rule, the new TDP rule. TDP process is a very prescriptive process that has major components that are required by a transit operator to complete, as you see listed on this slide. The new rule that was effective in July did make some changes. One of them is coordination. One of the reasons we're here is that this rule now formalizes a process to coordinate with the MPOs and governing bodies such as this. SFRTA, as many of you are aware, has continued to coordinate with staff. This is just now a formality now that puts it as a requirement for completion of their TDP. Another component is land use and conducting a land use development assessment, and we'll share some of that information later on, as well as demand estimation. Goals and objectives as part of the visionary plan, it allows the agency to look in and start to set that vision through goals and objectives. SFRTA just recently completed a strategic plan that very well aligns with the TDP. So we're utilizing those goals and objectives that are focused on safety, enhancing the passenger experience, looking for additional funds for revenue, as well as enhancing operations. There's also a public outreach and stakeholder coordination component. You see here, there's some collateral that's been distributed and is in front of you. Please take a moment to look at it. We have an active survey that's online. I encourage you to take that, encourage your constituents to participate. It's a very short survey, should take a couple minutes at the most. We did have a public involvement plan that's required to be prepared. It's been reviewed and approved by the Florida Department of Transportation. We went through a branding process, as you can see on the slide, on track for excellence. We do have an active website as a manner to not only inform the public of the TDP process, but also serve as an opportunity to provide comments and input. We just recently completed a platform intercept survey where we went out and engaged riders on weekdays and on the weekend with this survey to gather input so that we can provide then reflect that in this TDP, as well as we have an ongoing online survey that will be active for the next month or two. We are currently going before and coordinating with the local workforce boards. We're meeting with all the MPOs in the Tri-County area and other agencies to gather their input, get their comments as we are working to prepare this major update for SFRTA. Another component is understanding the existing service area. With Tri-Rail servicing over 80 miles, we encompass all 3 counties. And just some quick facts and looking at the population of those counties, where we have our younger adults comprise about 18 to 20%, and then we have our 65 or older, which is equivalent, a little bit more, 16 to 24%. And you can see here, 8% of those households are zero-car households, with 74% of people driving alone to work, with only 2% taking public transportation, and our commute times anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes. We also are looking at commute patterns, particularly here in Palm Beach County, with the roughly 800,000 employees. About half of them reside and work within the county. But then you start to look at those employees who reside outside the county and travel into Palm Beach for employment. It's roughly 218,000. And then residents that are employed outside the county, about 192,000. This is an opportunity where Tri-Rail, with their extensive regional service, seeking to further capture those additional trips. We also look at existing transit service beyond Tri-Rail itself, but what are those services in Palm Beach County, such as PalmTran and other type of municipal services that are available for passengers? And as I mentioned before, specifically land use, there is now an emphasis on land use. SFRTA did pass a resolution to support transit-oriented development at their stations. There's currently a number of projects that are active as listed here, where there's joint development opportunities on property that SFRTA owns. There's also a component looking at multimodal connectivity and what is it that they can continue to improve with respect to bicycles, as well as rehab to their existing facilities to provide that access and connectivity to stations. 10-year implementation plan really is the meat of the TDP. This plan is from 2026 to 2035. We are in the process right now of starting to develop that implementation plan. To SFRTA's credit, over the last several years, they've been busy preparing a number of strategic documents. The strategic plan, as I mentioned, but they've actually gone through and developed a 20-year capital plan that they update annually through a capital prioritization process. Transit access management plan, rail fleet management plan, all these serve as input into the 10-year implementation plan. TDP also provides an opportunity for SFRTA to build upon their accomplishments. They opened up downtown service earlier this year in January, and they also have implemented an express service as well as late trains back in July, and then continuing through their successful ride partner services at their station with Uber, Lyft, as well as taxis. Our next steps, we are on target to have a preliminary draft of the TDP in January that will go through a review process and then seek their governing board approval in February so that we can meet the March 1st submittal deadline to FDOT, which then they'll review and then we'll finalize based upon their comments and input. In closing, again, I encourage you to take the survey, share that with friends, family, your constituents, and if there's any questions or input, we would be happy to take that now. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Staff, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Right, do any committee members have comments on this item? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our informational items for today. So we are moving on to administrative items. Items 4A through 4C are informational only. There are no staff presentations unless there is a request for one. Seeing none, our next TAC meeting is scheduled for February 5th. Wishing everybody a happy and safe holidays. And at this time, our committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.